My fiancée told me she was working late. An hour later, her coworker accidentally posted a group photo with her sitting on his lap. I quietly saved it. That night, I forwarded it to HR. What happened next? Legendary. The text from my fiancée, Megan, came through at 7:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. Hey babe, going to be super late tonight. We're all hands on deck trying to hit the quarterly deadline. Don't wait up for me. So, I was on the couch, reading a book. I texted back a simple, no problem, work hard. An hour and a half later, I was scrolling through Instagram, killing time before bed. And that's when I saw it. It wasn't on her feed, of course. It was on the feed of a junior marketing guy from her department, a kid named Kevin, who was known for oversharing. He had posted a classic group photo, a blurry shot of about 10 people squeezed into a booth at some trendy downtown bar. The caption read, "Deadline crushed. Team celebration." And right in the middle of the happy celebrating team was Megan. She was laughing, holding a cocktail, and sitting squarely on the lap of her boss, a senior manager named Alex. His arm was wrapped securely around her waist, and his hand was resting a little too high on her side. They looked comfortable, familiar. Like this wasn't the first time they'd been in that position. I stared at the photo for a full minute. My heart didn't race. My stomach didn't drop. I felt a strange, almost serene sense of calm. The kind of calm you feel when a long, tedious investigation finally yields a single, perfect piece of incontrovertible evidence. The vague suspicion I had been harboring for months had just been confirmed with a timestamp and a geotag. I didn't get angry. I didn't throw my phone. I just held my thumb down on the screen and quietly saved the image to my camera roll. Then I saved it to my secure cloud server. Then I backed it up to an encrypted hard drive. In my world, you always protect your evidence. Megan thought she was at a team celebration. She had no idea she was the subject of a newly opened internal investigation. And I was about to become the most dedicated, most ruthless lead investigator she had ever encountered. Let's be very clear about something. I am not a wimp. I am not a doormat. I am the senior director of corporate compliance for a Fortune 500 company. It's a job that sounds boring, and mostly it is. But my entire career is built on a single, unwavering principle. Rules exist for a reason. I am the man who writes the code of conduct. I am the man who investigates violations of it, and I am the man who recommends termination for those who think the rules don't apply to them. My life is a fortress, built of policies, procedures, and the absolute certainty that actions have consequences. I met Megan 2 years ago at a company mixer. We work for the same massive tech firm, but in completely different divisions. She's in marketing, the department of flashy presentations and questionable expense reports. I'm in compliance, the department they whisper about in hushed tones. She was chaos, I was order. I found her fascinating. I saw her as a personal challenge, a system that was operating far outside of acceptable parameters. I genuinely thought I could be a positive influence, that I could guide her towards a more stable, more principled way of living. Our relationship wasn't a business arrangement. It was, in my mind, a rehabilitation project. I was blind to the fact that she didn't want to be rehabilitated. She just wanted a sponsor. I wasn't a simp. For 2 years, I set clear boundaries. I never merged our finances. The house we lived in was mine alone, purchased long before I met her. I didn't pay her bills. She had her own salary, and she was responsible for her own life. My contribution was providing a stable home and a partnership with a man who I thought was helping her grow. I was wrong. I wasn't helping her grow. I was just providing a secure base from which she could launch her own deceptive operations. The photo wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a professional one. In sitting on her boss's lap, she wasn't just my fiancée being unfaithful. She was an employee in a subordinate position, engaging in a public display of inappropriate conduct with her direct superior. It was a clear, flagrant violation of at least 4 sections of the company's code of conduct. A code of conduct that I had personally written. She thought she was cheating on her fiancé. She had no idea she was cheating on the man who held her entire professional future in the palm of his hand. That night, after I had secured the evidence, I went into my home office. I opened a new encrypted file on my server. I labeled it Case File M. Jenkins A. Vance. Then I composed a new, anonymous email address. From that address, I drafted a formal ethics complaint. It was a work of art, cool, professional, and devastatingly precise. It cited the exact policies being violated: fraternization, conflict of interest, unprofessional conduct, and misuse of company resources. As I was fairly certain this team celebration would end up on Alex's expense report, I attached the photo as Exhibit A. And then I sent it directly to the one person at the company whose job it was to take this more seriously than anyone else: the head of human resources. The investigation had officially begun, and the primary suspects had no idea they were even being investigated. Update 1. The morning after I filed the complaint was a masterclass in strategic deception. Megan came home around 2 a.m., smelling of alcohol and cheap perfume. She tiptoed into the bedroom, thinking I was asleep. I was awake, of course, staring at the ceiling, my mind methodically gaming out the next 20 moves. In the morning, she was a little hungover, but otherwise her usual bubbly self. "Oh my God, last night was insane," she said, pouring herself a coffee. "We were at the office until midnight. Alex is such a slave driver." I just nodded, my face a mask of mild, husbandly sympathy. "Sounds tough," I said. "Make sure he expenses you a good lunch for all that overtime." This was the core of my strategy: absolute, unwavering normalcy. An investigation is most effective when the subjects are unaware they are being watched. I needed her to continue operating as usual. I needed her to keep making mistakes. The HR department at my company is a well-oiled, terrifying machine. They don't mess around. I knew my anonymous complaint, with its clear photographic evidence, would trigger an immediate, high-priority investigation. I also knew it would be handled with the utmost discretion at first. My job in compliance gives me a unique level of access and insight into the company's inner workings. I don't work directly with HR on these kinds of cases to avoid a conflict of interest, but I know the playbook. I knew they would start by quietly pulling records: email communications, instant messenger logs, expense reports, corporate travel records, even the logs from the keycard scanners at the office doors. They would build a case before they ever spoke to a single person. And I knew they would find more, because I had spent the last 6 months quietly observing a pattern of behavior that was, at best, deeply unprofessional. I hadn't acted on it because it was personal. Now it was no longer personal. It was a compliance issue. I had seen the late-night Uber receipts on our shared account, trips from the office to her apartment before she had moved in with me, all charged to Alex's corporate card. I had seen the restaurant bills from team lunches that were just for 2 people, at places far too romantic for a boss and his subordinate. I had even, on the one occasion I had used her laptop to print something, seen a string of instant messages from Alex that were so wildly inappropriate they would have made a sailor blush. I hadn't saved them then. It was a mistake I was about to rectify. My job now was to become a second, anonymous source. I needed to feed the HR investigation with the evidence they were looking for, without ever revealing my identity. That weekend, while Megan was out at brunch with her equally awful friends, I put the second phase of my plan into action. I went into our home office and booted up her personal laptop, which she never bothered to password protect. It took me less than 10 minutes to find what I was looking for. The chat logs with Alex were still there, a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. There were flirtatious comments, inside jokes, and most damningly, a series of conversations where he promised her a promotion she was not qualified for, in exchange for her loyalty. I took high-resolution photos of the screen with my phone. I didn't want to save the files directly, as that could leave a digital trail. The photos were clean, undeniable proof of a quid pro quo arrangement and an inappropriate relationship. This was no longer just about a drunken night at a bar. This was about a serious abuse of power by a senior manager. I also went through the shared photo album on our cloud account. Tucked away in a folder she thought I never looked at were more pictures from company events. Pictures where she and Alex were always standing a little too close, a little too familiar. I saved them all. I compiled this new evidence into a second dossier. I sent it from a different, anonymous email address, this time to the lead HR investigator, who I knew had been assigned to the case. The email was simple: "I am a colleague of Megan Jenkins. I am aware that an investigation is underway. Perhaps this will be helpful." I wished to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. The trap was now baited with a feast of evidence. Megan and Alex thought they were dealing with a single blurry photograph. They had no idea I was about to drop an entire filing cabinet on their heads. The first sign that the investigation had escalated came the following Tuesday. Megan came home from work looking pale and shaken. "The weirdest thing happened today," she said, pouring herself a very large glass of wine. "HR called me into a meeting, and Alex too separately. They were asking all these strange questions. About our working relationship, about after-hours events, about expense reports. It was so intense. I put on my best concerned fiancé face. 'That does sound weird,' I said. 'What's it about?' 'I have no idea,' she lied, her eyes darting away from mine. 'Alex thinks someone might have a grudge against him and is trying to get him in trouble. We both just told them we have a great professional working relationship. It was all a big nothing.' I just nodded. 'I'm sure it is,' I said. Lying to HR during a formal investigation. A fireable offense in its own right. The pieces were all falling into place more perfectly than I could have ever imagined. She had no idea she was confessing her own career suicide to me. She thought I was her safe harbor. I was the one who had sent the torpedo. Update 2. The week following the initial HR interviews was a beautiful, slow-motion car crash. Megan and Alex had made the single most fatal error a person can make in a corporate investigation. They had lied, and they had lied about the same things, which meant their stories were now locked in. They were standing on a trapdoor, holding hands, completely unaware that I was the one with my hand on the lever. The HR investigator, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Linda, now had their official on-the-record statements. Statements that claimed a purely professional relationship. Statements that I knew were about to be systematically dismantled by the evidence I had provided. The next move in the playbook would be a forensic audit of their corporate accounts, and this is where my own expertise came into play. I knew exactly what Linda would be looking for, and I decided to help her find it. On Wednesday, I sent a third and final anonymous email. This one was more technical. It pointed her towards specific dates and specific expense reports filed by Alex. It highlighted a dinner on a date when I knew Megan and I had been at a family function, meaning the team dinner Alex had expensed was with someone else. It flagged a hotel bill from a business trip to a city where the company had no clients, a trip I knew Megan had also been on for a friend's bachelorette party. This was the kill shot. It gave the investigation a precise roadmap to their deception. It was no longer just about flirtatious messages or a single inappropriate photo. It was now a clear pattern of them using company money to fund their affair. Megan's anxiety level throughout the week was a joy to behold. She was jumpy, irritable, and constantly on her phone texting Alex. She was trying to keep her story straight, trying to plug the leaks in a ship that was already halfway to the bottom of the ocean. She even had the audacity to complain to me about the stress. "This whole HR thing is a nightmare," she said one evening. "It's so distracting. I can't focus on my work, and Alex is being really weird about it." "You just have to tell the truth," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "As long as you're honest, you have nothing to worry about." That's what I always say in my compliance trainings. The look of panic that flickered across her face was priceless. The hammer finally fell on Friday. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. I was in my office, reviewing a new draft of our anti-corruption policy, when I got a company-wide email. It was a sterile, corporate announcement from the head of the marketing division. "We are writing to inform you that Alex Vance is no longer with the company, effective immediately. We wish him the best in his future endeavors." He had been fired unceremoniously. The phrase, "wish him the best in his future endeavors," is corporate speak for, he was fired for cause and we can't legally tell you the sordid details. I knew Megan's fate would be decided separately. I went home, made myself a drink, and waited. She walked in the door 2 hours later. Her face was ashen, her eyes were red. She was carrying a small cardboard box with the contents of her desk. She didn't say anything. She just walked to the couch and sat down, staring into the middle distance. "Rough day?" I asked, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. She finally looked at me. "They fired Alex," she whispered. "They called me in right after. They showed me everything: the photo, the chats, the expense reports, the hotel bill. She started to cry, quiet, defeated tears. They know we lied. They suspended me without pay pending final termination. I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment. I let her sit there, stewing in the wreckage of her own life. Then I walked over to the coffee table and placed a single, printed photograph on it, face up. It was the picture of her on Alex's lap. Her head snapped up. She stared at the photo, then at me. And in her eyes, I saw the final, horrifying pieces of the puzzle click into place. "It was you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The anonymous complaint. It was you." I didn't say anything. I just took a slow sip of my drink. Final update. The confrontation in the living room was not the dramatic screaming match she probably expected. My revenge was never about being loud. It was about being right. "Why?" she asked, the tears now flowing freely. "Why would you do this to me?" I finally sat down in the chair opposite her. "Let me explain this to you in terms you might understand," I began, my voice as calm and steady as if I were conducting a disciplinary hearing. "You and I work for a company that has a code of conduct, a set of rules that we all agree to abide by. It's the foundation of our professional lives. It's what ensures a safe, fair, and ethical workplace." I leaned forward. "You didn't just cheat on me, Megan. You violated corporate policy. You engaged in an inappropriate relationship with your direct superior. You participated in a scheme to defraud the company by falsifying expense reports. And then, when questioned by human resources during a formal investigation, you lied. You committed perjury." She just stared at me, dumbfounded. She had never considered that her personal betrayal had a professional dimension. "I am the Senior Director of Corporate Compliance," I continued. "My entire job, my entire professional identity, is built on enforcing those rules. The rules you so casually and repeatedly broke. You complain about my job being boring, about me being too rigid. But that rigidity, that absolute adherence to the rules, is what keeps our company from falling apart. It's what I believe in." "So when I saw that photo," I said, tapping the picture on the table, "I didn't just see my fiancée on another man's lap. I saw a clear and present threat to the integrity of the system I am sworn to protect. I saw a compliance failure, and I did my job. I reported it just as any employee is obligated to do." "You destroyed my life over a rulebook," she sobbed. "No," I said, standing up. "You destroyed your life because you have no integrity. You thought you could live in a world without rules, without consequences. You thought you could have my stability at home while you broke the rules at work. You failed to understand that for a man like me, they are the same thing. My personal life and my professional life are governed by the same code of conduct. You violated both. The consequences are simply the system correcting itself." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Your employment at the company is over. Our engagement is over. Your residency in my house is over. I have packed a suitcase for you with a few days' worth of clothes. It's by the door. I will have the rest of your belongings professionally packed and sent to your parents' house by the end of the week." "Where am I supposed to go?" she cried. "That is a logistical problem that falls outside the scope of my department." I said, "Goodbye, Megan." I left her there, sitting on the couch, and went for a long walk. When I came back 2 hours later, she and her suitcase were gone. It's been a month now. The company finalized her termination. Alex, I heard, is unemployable in our industry. The story of his firing for having an affair with a subordinate and falsifying expense reports has spread like wildfire. Megan, as promised, had to move back in with her parents. Her career in tech is over. She has no money, no job, and a reputation that is in absolute tatters. My revenge wasn't a crime of passion. It was a compliance review. I took her blatant disregard for the rules of our relationship, and I held it up against the cold, hard, unforgiving rules of the world she thought she could conquer. She was audited, and she failed. Spectacularly. She thought she was just playing a game. She never understood that I was the one who wrote the rulebook. And the house always wins. My girlfriend declared, "I'm moving in with my male best friend for financial reasons," without asking me first. I said, "That works out perfectly." What I told her later that night made her pack in tears. There is a certain kind of quiet that settles in a home after a storm. It is not peace, not yet. It is the sound of the wind having finally exhausted itself, leaving you to survey the damage. In my case, the storm was my girlfriend of 4 years, Sarah, and the damage was the life I thought we were building. But as I sit here now, I realize something crucial. The storm did not destroy my foundation. It just cleared away a house that was already rotten to the core. Let me start by saying I am not the kind of man who is easily fooled. I am a systems analyst. My entire career is built on seeing patterns, anticipating problems, and understanding how one small change can bring a whole network crashing down. I applied that same logic to my life, which is why I never understood men who complained about their girlfriends ignoring them or spending all their money. My relationship with Sarah was built on what I thought was a solid framework: mutual goals and shared investment. When we met, she was smart, ambitious, and had a clear 5-year plan. We were a team. We agreed to combine our efforts to save for a house. It was a joint venture. I made more money, so I contributed a larger percentage to our shared savings, but she was contributing too. Every decision was a discussion. We were building something, brick by brick, and I respected that. I loved her for it. Her best friend, a guy named Ethan, was the only variable I could never quite account for. He was one of those people who is perpetually on the verge of making it big. He dressed in expensive clothes he could not afford, drove a leased car he was always behind on, and carried himself with the smug certainty of a man who has never had to face a real consequence. He was always around, offering unsolicited advice, making little jokes at my expense that were just plausible enough to be deniable. Sarah always defended him. "He is like a brother to me," she would say. "He just does not have the stable foundation you do, Mark." The stability she mentioned was me. I was the foundation. And last Tuesday, she decided to test just how much weight I could bear. She came home from work with a strange energy, a mix of nervousness and forced cheerfulness. She sat me down on the couch, the one we spent 3 weekends picking out together. Then she dropped the bomb. It was not a request, it was a declaration. "I have some amazing news," she started, a little too brightly. "Ethan's roommate is moving out at the end of the month. I am going to take the spot." I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There was not one. She rushed to explain, her words tumbling over each other. "Think about it, Mark. It is purely for financial reasons. His rent is so much cheaper than my half of the bills here. I could save an extra $1,000 a month. We could get our house so much faster. It is the perfect solution." I let the silence hang in the air. She wanted a reaction. She wanted an argument, a debate where she could paint me as controlling or insecure. I refused to give it to her. I ran 1,000 scenarios in my head, analyzed every variable, and saw the single perfect path forward. I smiled. A calm, genuine smile. "Sarah," I said, my voice perfectly even. "That works out perfectly." The look on her face was priceless. The triumphant, prepared for a fight expression melted into pure confusion. This was not in her script. "It does?" she stammered. "Absolutely," I said, leaning back on the couch. "It is a brilliant financial decision, sacrificing a little comfort now for a bigger payoff later. That is exactly the kind of thinking that makes me so proud of you." Now she was completely off balance. She had expected a storm, but I had given her a clear, sunny day. She spent the rest of the evening talking excitedly about how much she would be able to put into our house fund, how great it would be to have Ethan as a roommate, and how mature we were being about all of this. I just nodded and agreed, adding supportive comments here and there. I was the perfect, understanding boyfriend. Later that night, as she was scrolling through apartment listings with Ethan on the phone, laughing and making plans, I waited. I let her finish the call. I let her bask in the glow of her apparent victory. Then I walked into the living room and sat down across from her. "I have been thinking about what you said," I began, my tone serious and thoughtful. "And you have inspired me. Since you are making this big move to accelerate our savings, I think it is only fair that I do the same." She looked at me, a little wary now. "What do you mean?" "Well," I said, leaning forward, "I have had this offer on the table for a few weeks now. A major project based out of our company's European headquarters. It is a 2-year contract. The pay is phenomenal, and it comes with a massive completion bonus. I was going to turn it down because I did not want to leave what we are building. But now, with you moving out to save money, It just makes perfect sense. I can put my things in storage, live cheaply over there, and we can put my entire salary plus the bonus towards our goal. By the time I get back, we will have enough to buy our dream house in cash. Her jaw slowly dropped. I could see the gears turning in her head, the panic starting to creep into her eyes. You took a job in Europe? I called and accepted it this evening, I said, lying as smoothly as I had ever told the truth. They are sending the final contract over in the morning. The project starts in 3 weeks. In fact, I am ending the lease on this apartment at the end of the month. The timing is just perfect, is not it? The color drained from her face. You ended the lease? But where will I stay when I come back to visit? Visit? Sarah, the whole point of this is to save money. Flights from Europe are expensive. We need to be disciplined, both of us. This is what you wanted, a smart financial decision. Then I delivered the final blow. And since we will be managing our finances separately for the next 2 years, we need to split our shared assets now. It is the only logical thing to do. I have already drawn up a spreadsheet of the joint savings account, the furniture, everything we have accumulated. We need to figure out who gets what. She just stared at me, speechless. The brilliant plan she had cooked up with Ethan, the one where she got to live with him while keeping me and my income as her safety net, had just been vaporized. She thought she was making a simple move. She had no idea she had just triggered a system-wide collapse. The look in her eyes was no longer confusion. It was pure, unadulterated terror. She started to pack that night, but not with the cheerful excitement she had before. She packed in tears. Update 1. It has been 2 weeks since the night I dismantled our future. The fallout has been exactly as I predicted, only more satisfying. Thank you for the support and the messages. It is good to know that clear, logical thinking is still appreciated in a world of chaos. The day after our conversation was a masterclass in backtracking. Sarah woke up with red, puffy eyes and immediately tried to cancel her plan. I was not thinking clearly, she said, forcing a laugh. Moving in with Ethan is a silly idea. I do not want to do that, and you should not go to Europe. We are better together. I just shook my head, my expression one of deep, sincere regret. I cannot, Sarah. I have already signed the contract. If I back out now, I will be blacklisted at my company. My career would be over. You know I cannot do that. I had, of course, signed nothing. The contract was a PDF I had spent 2 hours creating myself, complete with official-looking letterhead I copied from my company's website. But she did not know that. Besides, I continued, using her own words against her, you were right. This is a smart financial move. We have to think about the long term. A couple of years apart is a small price to pay for a lifetime of security. Every argument she tried to make, I countered with her own initial logic. She wanted to save money. This was the best way. She wanted to get our house faster. This would guarantee it. She had set the trap, and I was merely holding the door open for her. The process of splitting our assets was brutal for her. It turned out that our shared savings account was about 90% my contributions. When I transferred her portion, the exact amount she had deposited over the years, to her personal account, she was shocked at how small the number was. But what about all the interest? She asked, her voice trembling. That is allocated proportionally to our initial investments, I said calmly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The furniture was another battle. She started pointing at things, the couch, the dining table, the television. We can sell this and split the money, she said. I pulled out another spreadsheet. This one had receipts. I purchased the couch and the television before we even met, I explained. The dining table I paid for myself as a housewarming gift when we moved in. They are not shared assets. By the end of the day, she was left with her clothes, some kitchen items, and a small amount of cash. The life she had taken for granted was revealed to be a life I had almost entirely funded. She moved in with Ethan a week ago. The first few days, my phone was silent. I think she was trying to project an image of success, of having made the right choice. She posted a few pictures on social media of her and Ethan drinking wine in their new apartment, with captions like, "New beginnings," and "So excited for this next chapter." Then the calls started. First, it was about the car. The car she had been driving was in my name. I had been paying the insurance. I called her and told her that since I was moving to Europe, I was selling the car and canceling the policy. She would need to find her own transportation. The panic in her voice was real. But how am I supposed to get to work? Mark, you cannot do this. It is a financial decision, Sarah, I said, my tone sympathetic. I cannot afford to pay for a car I will not be using for 2 years. Next came the phone bill. She was on my family plan. I informed her she would be removed at the end of the billing cycle. Then it was the streaming services, the gym membership, all the little financial threads that had tied her to my income. One by one, I cut them all. Ethan, predictably, has been a nightmare. I have started getting texts from him. At first they were arrogant. Dude, you really messed up. Sarah is amazing. Your loss. I did not reply. Then they became annoyed. Hey, Sarah is a little short on rent this month. You need to send her some money. Do not be a jerk. I did not reply. His latest message, sent late last night, was pure desperation. Mark, you need to call me. The landlord is threatening to evict us. Sarah cries all the time. You created this mess. You need to fix it. They genuinely believe this is my fault. They believe I am obligated to fix the situation they created. Their arrogance is matched only by their stupidity. They thought they could outsmart a systems analyst. They failed to understand that I do not just see the system. I know how to break it. I have not moved to Europe. I have moved into a new apartment across town. It is smaller, but it is all mine. The lease on our old place is officially terminated at the end of this week. Sarah and Ethan think I am packing for an international flight. In reality, I am just unpacking the boxes that contain my new, peaceful life. They have no idea where I am. They have no idea that I am not thousands of miles away, but just across the city watching their entire poorly designed plan crumble into dust. And the best part is, I am just getting started. Update 2. It has been a month now. The initial shockwave has passed, and I am now in the phase of observing the aftershocks. The story has taken a turn that even I did not fully anticipate. My plan was simply to extricate myself from the situation cleanly and let their own poor planning be their downfall. But it turns out, when you build your life on a foundation of lies, the collapse is far more spectacular than you can imagine. After a week of increasingly desperate texts from Ethan, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. It was Sarah's mother. I had always had a cordial relationship with her parents. They seemed like decent people. I was wrong. Her mother did not waste time with pleasantries. She launched into a tirade about how I had abandoned her daughter, how I had left her stranded and destitute. She called me cruel and heartless. I let her finish. When she finally paused to take a breath, I spoke calmly. With all due respect, Sarah made an independent financial decision to move in with another man. I have simply made some financial decisions of my own. She is your girlfriend. You have a responsibility to take care of her. She yelled. Actually, I said, I do not think she is my girlfriend anymore. And I would ask Sarah about her responsibilities to me and to our shared goals before you lecture me on mine. That conversation was the opening salvo in a new campaign, the guilt and shame offensive. Suddenly, mutual friends started calling me. They had all heard a heavily edited version of the story from Sarah, one in which I had a sudden mental breakdown, became controlling, and punished her for trying to be financially responsible. This was a variable I had anticipated. Before this all started, when my suspicions about Sarah and Ethan first began to solidify a few months ago, I had started my real work. I am a systems analyst, remember? I analyze data, I find patterns. I had installed monitoring software on our home network, not to spy on her emails, but to track data traffic patterns. I noticed that her data usage on her laptop and phone spiked late at night, and it was all directed towards social media and messaging apps when she claimed to be working. I also noticed that their shared online grocery orders, paid for from our joint account, often included expensive items I never saw, like high-end liquor and steaks. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I ran a background check. Not on her, but on Ethan. It turned out his financial situation was far worse than I imagined. He had 2 prior evictions and a string of unpaid debts. The owner of the apartment he was renting was a small, independent landlord, not a large corporation, a man who would be much more likely to take swift action against a non-paying tenant. I had compiled all of this, the data logs, the grocery receipts, a copy of Ethan's public eviction records. I had it all in a neat digital folder, my insurance policy. When the first mutual friend called to tell me what a terrible person I was, I did not argue. I simply said, "I think you have only heard one side of the story. Let me send you an email with some context." I sent them a link to a password-protected web page I had built. On it, I laid out the entire timeline, unemotionally and with evidence. I included screenshots of the grocery orders, showing the items that were clearly not for our household. I included the public records of Ethan's financial instability, and I included the most damning piece of evidence: transcripts from our home security system's audio recordings. The system recorded audio when it was armed or disarmed. I had captured several conversations between Sarah and Ethan from when they thought I was asleep or at work. The conversations were sickening. They had been planning this for months. It was not just about saving money. It was a deliberate scheme. The plan was for Sarah to move in with Ethan, and for me to continue funding her lifestyle, the car, the phone, her spending money, under the guise of our relationship. She would then use that money to support Ethan, keeping him from getting evicted while he got his new business off the ground. They laughed about how I was so trusting, how I was the perfect, long-term investment. They called me their retirement plan. I sent this link to every person who contacted me on her behalf. The calls stopped abruptly. The smear campaign died before it even began. I had not just countered her narrative. I had obliterated it with cold, hard facts. The best part was the call I received from her father. He was a proud man, and I could hear the humiliation in his voice. He had clearly seen the evidence. He did not yell. He just said, "I would like to arrange to pick up the rest of Sarah's things from your new address." He had somehow gotten my new address. It did not matter. I told him I would leave the boxes in the building's loading dock on a specific day. He agreed. He then asked a question that I knew was coming. "The car, she needs it for work. Is there any way she could just take over the payments?" "The car has already been sold," I said. It was another lie, of course. The car was sitting in my new secure parking garage. It was a sound financial decision. The silence on the other end of the line was my victory. He knew he had no leverage. He knew his daughter had been caught in a scheme so foolish and so greedy that there was no defending it. Sarah and Ethan are now facing the full consequences of their actions. Their landlord, who I may or may not have sent an anonymous tip to regarding his tenant's financial history and the precarious nature of his new roommate's income, has started the eviction process. Sarah is unemployed. Her company, a small firm where reputation is everything, let her go after rumors of her unethical planning started to circulate. It seems one of our mutual friends works in the same industry. They are trapped in an apartment they cannot afford, with no allies left to call. They thought they were masterminds. They were just amateurs who picked the wrong target. They tried to manipulate a system without understanding that I am the one who builds the systems. And I always build in a failsafe. Final update. It has been 6 months since my old life ended, and my new one began. The dust has completely settled. The silence from their side is absolute. The story is over, and I can definitively say that I won. Not just the battle, but the entire war, and I did it without ever raising my voice. The eviction I mentioned in my last update went through. Sarah and Ethan were forced out of their apartment. The image of them trying to move their things without a car, a detail I heard from a former mutual friend, is a source of quiet satisfaction. Their brilliant plan, hatched over months of whispered phone calls and secret meetings, ended with them standing on a curb, surrounded by boxes they could not afford to move. Ethan, as I predicted, folded under the pressure. He blamed Sarah for everything, for bringing her drama into his life and for getting him kicked out. Their great friendship, the one that was like family, dissolved the moment the money ran out. He moved back to his hometown to live with his parents, a 30-year-old man defeated by his own arrogance. Sarah's fall was harder and more complete. After losing her job and her apartment, she had no choice but to move back in with her parents. But the home she returned to was not the supportive sanctuary she expected. Her father, a man who valued reputation above all, was deeply ashamed. He had seen the evidence I had compiled. He knew the truth. He and her mother were providing her with a roof over her head, but the warmth was gone. She was a disgrace to their family name, and they treated her as such. I learned through the grapevine that she has been struggling to find new work. The industry she was in is small, and word travels fast. The story of her manipulative plan, backed by undeniable proof, has made her toxic. She is paying a long-term price for a short-sighted scheme. The final and most satisfying piece of this entire saga happened about 2 months ago. I received a formal letter from a lawyer she had hired. It was a demand letter, a desperate attempt to claim some sort of financial settlement from our 4-year relationship. It was full of legal jargon about emotional distress and implied partnerships. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman, had been waiting for this. We did not just respond with a letter of our own. We responded with a counterclaim. We filed a civil suit against Sarah and Ethan for conspiracy to commit fraud. Our case was meticulous. We had the audio recordings of them planning to use my income to support him. We had the financial records showing the money from our joint account being spent on him. We had Ethan's text messages demanding I send Sarah money. We even had a sworn affidavit from their former landlord about the nature of their tenancy and their conversations with him. The lawsuit was not about winning money. It was about making a statement. It was a final, undeniable declaration that I would not be a victim. Her lawyer dropped her as a client within a week of receiving our filing. Facing a lawsuit they could not possibly win, and with no money to hire another attorney, Sarah was forced to sign a settlement. In it, she formally renounced any and all claims against me, now and in the future. She also had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, legally preventing her from ever speaking or writing about me or our relationship again. My smear campaign insurance was now ironclad and legally binding. I walk away from this with everything. My finances are secure, my career is thriving, my new apartment feels like a real home. I have learned a valuable, if painful, lesson about trust and the importance of verifying data, even in your personal life. The job in Europe was, of course, a complete fabrication, a strategic maneuver designed to force her hand. I never intended to leave. Why would I? I had a front row seat to the most satisfying system collapse I have ever witnessed. They thought they were clever. They saw me as a stable, predictable, and exploitable resource. They failed to understand that the most stable systems are often the most complex, and the quietest parts are the ones that control everything. They wanted to play a game of chess, but they were playing against a grandmaster who had already seen every possible move they could make. They did not just lose. They were dismantled. And my life is quieter, cleaner, and better for it. The storm is over. The silence that remains is peace. My fiancée texted me 30 minutes before the wedding. I'm sorry, I can't marry you. I deserve more. I replied to the DJ, change of plans, play the playlist. Then I got on stage, read her message aloud, and turned the reception into a breakup party. 3 days later, she showed up crying, after finding out her backup plan was already engaged. I never thought I'd be the guy with the wedding disaster story. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. My name's Trevor. And 6 months ago, I was supposed to marry the woman I thought was the love of my life. Olivia and I had been together for 4 years, engaged for 1. We'd met in graduate school, built our careers side by side, and moved in together after 2 years. The proposal happened at her family's lake house, with both our families watching from the deck. It was perfect. She cried, I cried. Everyone cheered. Wedding planning wasn't easy. It never is. But we made it through with minimal drama. Olivia wanted a big wedding. I would have been happy with something smaller, but I wanted her to be happy. So we booked a fancy venue, invited 175 guests, and spent way more than we should have on flowers, food, and an open bar. Olivia had moved most of her things to her parents' house 2 weeks before the wedding, following her family's tradition. She'd left behind some clothes, personal items, and a few boxes of stuff we'd planned to bring to our new place after the honeymoon. She was supposed to be staying at her parents' until the wedding, though I later discovered this wasn't entirely true. The morning of the wedding, I woke up feeling great. My best man, Chris, and 3 other groomsmen were staying at an Airbnb near the venue. We had breakfast, got dressed in our tuxes, and headed to the venue for photos before the ceremony. Everything was on schedule. Then, 30 minutes before the ceremony was set to begin, as guests were being seated, and I was waiting in a side room with my groomsmen, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Trevor, I'm so sorry to do this, but I can't go through with the wedding. These past few weeks have made me realize I deserve more than what we have. Please don't try to find me or contact me. I've already left the venue. I hope someday you'll understand." I stared at my phone, reading and rereading the message, convinced it was some kind of prank. But Olivia wasn't the pranking type. Chris noticed something was wrong and asked what happened. I showed him the text and his face went from confusion to anger. Is she serious? What does she mean? Deserve more? I have no idea, I managed to say, still in shock. Call her maid of honor, see if Olivia's actually gone. He did. Lauren, the maid of honor, answered in tears. Confirmed Olivia had indeed fled the venue about 20 minutes earlier. Hadn't explained anything to anyone, just grabbed her purse and phone and left. Her wedding dress was still hanging in the bridal suite. The wedding planner knocked on our door, wondering if we were ready to start. I showed her the text. To her credit, she didn't freak out. Instead, she asked what I wanted to do. What did I want to do? My fiancé had just ditched me at the altar with a cold text message. My first instinct was to hide in that room forever. My second was to run after Olivia and demand an explanation. But neither of those options felt right. Then I had a thought. We've already paid for everything, right? The venue, the food, the alcohol? Yes, the planner confirmed. Everything's been paid in full. And all our friends and family are here? They are. I looked at Chris, then back at the planner. Then let's have a party. Chris raised his eyebrows. What kind of party? A my fiancé just dumped me party. Tell the DJ to switch to the party playlist we made for after dinner, and tell the bartenders to start pouring. The wedding planner hesitated. I should check with the venue manager about changing the nature of the event. There might be contract issues. Please do, I said. Tell them I'll sign whatever they need. We're still using the same space, time, and services, just for a different kind of celebration. She stepped out to make a call, returning a few minutes later with a relieved smile. The manager says it's fine. They've seen worse wedding day disasters, and as long as we're not violating any laws, they're happy to accommodate the change. Within minutes, the planner had informed the venue staff of the change in plans. Chris took it upon himself to tell my parents and siblings, who were understandably shocked but rallied around me. I texted my close friends who were already seated, letting them know what was happening. At my request, the DJ announced over the mic that there had been a change in programming and asked everyone to move from the ceremony space to the reception hall. Confused guests made their way inside, where the lights were dimmed, the dance floor was lit up, and the bar was open. The DJ was playing upbeat music instead of the classical pieces we'd selected for the ceremony. Once everyone was inside, I took the mic. My heart was pounding, but I was surprisingly calm. I had a quick moment of hesitation about sharing Olivia's private message, but decided that after leaving me at the altar, any expectation of privacy about the breakup itself was forfeited. Thank you all for coming today, I began. As you've probably figured out, there's not going to be a wedding. Murmurs spread through the crowd. About half an hour ago, Olivia sent me this text. I held up my phone and read her message aloud. Gasps and whispers rippled through the room. I saw Olivia's parents looking stunned and mortified near the back. Now, we have two options, I continued. We can all go home sad and confused, or we can take advantage of this beautiful venue, delicious food, and open bar that's already paid for, and have ourselves a party. I vote for the party. There was a moment of silence, then Chris started clapping. My college roommate whooped from somewhere in the crowd. Gradually, the applause built. I saw my mom wiping away tears but smiling. Olivia's parents slipped out the back door. I couldn't blame them. DJ, crank it up, I said, handing back the mic. The music got louder, and people actually started dancing. The catering staff, after a nod from the wedding planner, began serving the cocktail hour appetizers. The bartenders poured with a heavy hand. What followed was one of the strangest, most cathartic nights of my life. My friends and family surrounded me with support, alternating between letting me vent, making me laugh, and dragging me onto the dance floor. Even some of Olivia's friends who'd chosen to stay came up to express their shock and support. Not everyone embraced the impromptu celebration, of course. About a quarter of the guests, mostly older relatives and a few of Olivia's family friends, quietly left after offering condolences. I understood completely. A breakup party isn't everyone's idea of an appropriate response, but those who stayed seemed determined to make the best of an awful situation. The party lasted until midnight. We ate the wedding dinner, though the seating chart was abandoned. We drank all the alcohol. Someone convinced the DJ to play I Will Survive, and the entire dance floor sang along at the top of their lungs. My dad, who never dances, did the electric slide. My teenage cousins taught my 80-year-old grandmother how to dab. Throughout the night, I kept checking my phone, half expecting Olivia to text again with an explanation. But there was nothing. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache in my own apartment. Chris had crashed on my couch to make sure I was okay. I had dozens of messages from wedding guests telling me how sorry they were, but also what a great time they'd had at the breakup party. I spent the day in a daze, fielding calls from concerned relatives and friends. I still hadn't heard from Olivia. Her social media accounts had gone quiet. None of our mutual friends knew where she was. By the second day, I'd moved from shock to anger. I boxed up all of Olivia's things from our apartment, which she'd moved out of 2 weeks before the wedding to stay with her parents, a traditional thing her family insisted on. I arranged with her sister to have them picked up. I canceled our honeymoon and got most of my money back. I drank too much whiskey and fell asleep watching mindless TV. On the third day after the non-wedding, my doorbell rang around 7 p.m. When I opened the door, there stood Olivia, her eyes red and puffy from crying, wearing the same kind of oversized sweater and leggings she always wore when she was upset. "Can I come in?" she asked in a small voice. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but another part needed answers. So I stepped aside, letting her enter the apartment we'd shared for 2 years. She sat on the edge of the couch, perched like she might flee at any moment. I remained standing. "I'm sorry," she began, fresh tears welling up. "I handled everything so badly." "You think?" I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "You left me at the altar with a text message, Olivia. A text message." I know it was awful." I panicked. "Why? What happened? What did you mean you deserve more?" She looked down at her hands. "It's complicated. I've got time." She took a deep breath. "Do you remember Eric from my office?" Eric, the new marketing director who'd started at Olivia's company about 6 months earlier. She'd mentioned him a few times, always professionally. "Vaguely," I said, a sinking feeling in my stomach. "We got close over the last few months. Just as friends at first, but there was a connection." She twisted her hands together. "He understood me in ways I felt you never did. He was exciting and ambitious and you were having an affair," I finished flatly. "Not physically," she protested quickly. "Not until, well, the night before the wedding. The night she'd spent at her parents' house, or so I thought. So you cheated on me, then dumped me half an hour before our wedding because, what, Eric was your exciting backup plan?" She flinched at my tone, but didn't deny it. "He told me he had feelings for me, said I was settling by marrying you, that I deserved someone who could match my ambition, my energy. And you believed him." I was confused, scared about the commitment of marriage. He seemed like an escape from all the pressure. "So what are you doing here now? Shouldn't you be riding off into the sunset with Eric?" Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "He's engaged, has been for a year. His fiancée works overseas, but she's moving back next month for their wedding. He never mentioned her, not once." I couldn't help it. I laughed, a short, bitter laugh that made Olivia wince. "So he was just looking for a fling before his own wedding, and you fell for it?" "I made a terrible mistake," she whispered. "I threw away everything we built together because I got caught up in some fantasy. When I saw the videos of the reception." "Videos? They're all over social media. Everyone shared clips of your speech, the party. Everyone's talking about it." She pulled out her phone, showing me a TikTok someone had posted of me making my announcement, followed by the dance party that erupted later. It had over 100,000 views. "Great," I muttered. "I'm viral." "You looked so strong, so in control. Meanwhile, I was hiding in a hotel room, waiting for Eric, who never showed up. When I finally reached him yesterday, he told me the truth about his fiancée, said he was sorry for the misunderstanding, but thought I knew it was just casual. I felt a strange mix of emotions: vindication that Olivia had gotten her comeuppance, sadness for the relationship I'd lost, and an odd sense of pride that I'd handled the catastrophe with some dignity. "What do you want from me, Olivia?" I asked. "Forgiveness? A second chance?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe both? I know I don't deserve either. But I still love you, Trevor. I made a horrible mistake, but our 4 years together had to mean something." I considered her words carefully. Part of me still loved her too. You don't just switch off 4 years of feelings. But the trust was shattered. The image of her was forever altered. "You're right about one thing," I said finally. "You don't deserve either. You didn't just make a mistake. You made a series of deliberate choices that culminated in humiliating me on what should have been the happiest day of our lives. And for what? For someone who was using you just like you used me. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is getting a breakup text 30 minutes before I was supposed to say I do. What's not fair is finding out the person you trusted most was living a double life. What's not fair is you showing up here only after your plan B fell through." She was crying openly now, not bothering to wipe away the tears. "So that's it? We're done forever because of one mistake?" "This wasn't one mistake, Olivia. It was a betrayal of everything we were supposed to stand for, and I deserve more than that." I threw her own words back at her deliberately, watching them hit their mark. "Please, Trevor, just give me a chance to make it up to you." I shook my head. "I want you to leave. I've already packed your things. Your sister was supposed to pick them up tomorrow. Take them now instead." She looked around, noticing for the first time the stack of boxes by the door. "You were already getting rid of me. You got rid of yourself." She stood slowly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "For what it's worth, I really am sorry. And watching those videos, seeing how you turned a nightmare into something positive, it just reminded me of all the reasons I fell in love with you in the first place." "Too little too late," I said, though without malice. I was just stating a fact. I helped her carry the boxes to her car in silence. As she got into the driver's seat, she looked up at me one last time. "The breakup party looked fun," she said with a sad smile. "I wish I'd been there." "No," I replied, "you don't. Because everyone there knew exactly who you were and what you'd done. At least this way, you got to keep some dignity." I closed her car door and walked back inside without watching her drive away. It's been 6 months since then. The breakup party video did indeed go viral, landing me brief internet fame and even a few spots on morning talk shows. I've gotten hundreds of messages from strangers who experienced similar betrayals, thanking me for showing them a different way to respond to heartbreak. Olivia and I haven't spoken since that night. I heard through mutual friends that she quit her job and moved to another state for a fresh start. Eric got married as planned, though rumors spread through her old office about his behavior. As for me, I'm doing okay. Not great, not terrible, just okay. Some days I still miss the Olivia I thought I knew. Other days I'm grateful for the bullet dodged. The viral fame was weird but faded quickly, for which I'm thankful. If there's a lesson in all this, maybe it's that when life hands you an unexpected catastrophe, sometimes the best response is to crank up the music and dance anyway. It won't fix everything, but it beats the hell out of hiding in a room feeling sorry for yourself. And if your fiancé texts to dump you right before your wedding, well, at least make sure you get your money's worth from the venue. My fiancé went live and said, "Can't wait to marry this fool and take half." I commented, "Joke's on you, the wedding's canceled." Her face dropped midstream. Hey viewers, real quick, only 8% of you watching are subscribed, and the channel's kind of stuck right now. If you enjoy these stories, hitting that subscribe button would really help us keep going. Thanks. I'm 24 M. Ryan, writing this while my ex-fiancée Madison frantically tries to explain herself in the other room. This happened 2 hours ago, and I'm still processing how someone can destroy their entire future with one stupid live stream. Madison's been doing this Instagram influencer thing for about a year now. Started small, maybe 200 followers, mostly posting workout videos and lifestyle content. Nothing major, but she was passionate about building her brand. Over the past few months, her follower count started growing. She hit 5,000 last week and was super excited about potentially getting sponsorship deals. The growth went to her head a bit, but I figured it was harmless. We've been together 2 years, engaged for 6 months. I work in tech, make decent money, and we'd been planning a small wedding for next spring. Nothing fancy, just family and close friends. This afternoon, Madison was setting up for one of her regular live streams. She does them every Wednesday at 4 p.m., usually talks about fitness routines, upcoming content, answers questions from followers. Pretty standard stuff. I was working from home in the next room, had a client call scheduled for 4:30, so I was just finishing up some prep work when I heard her go live. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Wednesday check-in. I could hear her through the wall doing her usual intro, talking about her workout from earlier, some new protein powder she was trying. Normal content. About 10 minutes in, I heard her voice change. She got that gossipy tone she uses when she's talking to her girlfriends about drama. So, you guys have been asking about the wedding planning, and I have some tea to spill. I paused my work. Madison doesn't usually talk about our personal stuff on her streams. I know some of you think I'm crazy for getting married so young, but honestly, I've got it all figured out. She was talking louder now, clearly excited about whatever she was about to say. Ryan makes really good money in tech, and he's like totally clueless about protecting himself financially. I frowned. That wasn't true. I handle my own finances carefully. And here's the best part. When I bring up money stuff, he just says we'll figure it out together. No prenup talk, no separate accounts, nothing. My stomach started to turn. We'd had conversations about combining finances after marriage, but I'd been thinking about partnership, not whatever this was. Like, this man is gonna marry me with no protection whatsoever. A chill ran down my spine. I quietly moved closer to the door between our rooms. I've been doing research, and in this state, I'm entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. Half his salary, half his savings, half any bonuses. She was laughing now like this was the funniest thing in the world. And you guys don't even know the best part yet. His company is probably going to have some major growth soon. More money, better opportunities. She was being vague about my company's situation, but I could tell what she was hinting at. So I just have to stay married for a few years, let him make me comfortable, then if things don't work out, she made an exaggerated shrugging gesture. Honestly, can't wait to marry this fool and take half. I stood there in shock. The woman I was planning to spend my life with had just described me as a fool she was planning to financially exploit. I grabbed my phone and opened Instagram. I rarely used it, but I had an account. I pulled up her live stream. Sure enough, there she was, grinning at the camera while describing her plan to marry me for my money. The comments were rolling in. Some people were laughing, some were asking if this was a joke, others were saying it sounded messed up. I typed a comment using my real name. Joke's on you, the wedding's canceled. Madison's eyes went to the comment section like they always did when new ones came in. I watched her face change as she read my comment and saw my name. The color drained completely. Ow. Oh no, she said quietly, looking directly at the camera. She looked toward the door between our rooms, then back at the screen. Guys, I think Ryan just saw the stream. More comments started flooding in. People were asking if this was real, if I was actually watching, if the comment was really from me. Madison's hands were shaking as she tried to read the comments. Ryan, if you're watching this, I was just joking. It was just content. You know how social media works. But the damage was done. I'd heard exactly what she thought of me and our relationship. I'm going to end the stream. Sorry guys, technical difficulties. She ended the live video and I heard her rushing toward our room. Ryan, where are you? I was standing in the hallway when she found me. Ryan, thank God. Listen, that stream was just for engagement. I was being dramatic for the algorithm. Dramatic about planning to take half my money? Yes, I was playing up a character. You know how social media is. Controversy gets views. Madison, you researched divorce laws. You knew specific details about asset division. I was just trying to sound convincing for the content. You called me a fool. You detailed a plan to exploit me financially. Ryan, I love you. I want to marry you because I love you. No, you want to marry me because you think I'm an easy target. That's not true. I looked at her for a long moment. 2 years together, and I'd never seen this side of her. Madison, pack your stuff. Ryan, no, please. It was just a stupid stream. It was your honest thoughts. You just said them in public by mistake. Ryan, I'll delete everything. I'll post an apology. I'll never talk about money again. Madison, you can't delete a live stream, and you can't delete what I heard you say. Then I'll explain it was all fake. Was it fake when you researched what you'd be entitled to in a divorce? Was it fake when you calculated how long you'd need to stay married? She had no answer. Madison, I'm calling off the wedding. Ryan, please, don't let one stupid mistake ruin everything. This wasn't a mistake. This was you revealing who you really are. I spent the evening calling vendors. The caterer required full payment since we were less than 6 months out. The venue kept the deposit and charged a 50% cancellation fee. The photographer was more understanding but still kept her deposit. Total cost about $8,000. Expensive lesson, but cheaper than what Madison was planning. Update 1. 1 week later, the internet works fast, but not as fast as I initially thought. Thanks for all the comments. This whole situation has been educational. Madison's live stream got screen recorded by at least 3 people. By Friday, clips were starting to circulate in relationship advice groups and influencer drama pages. It took about 4 days for the story to really gain traction. Someone posted it on TikTok with the caption, "This is why prenups exist," and it started getting shared from there. Madison spent the weekend trying to do damage control. She posted multiple Instagram stories, claiming the whole thing was satirical content and that she was highlighting toxic relationship dynamics. The problem was that her explanation didn't match her delivery on the stream. She'd been genuinely excited and conspiratorial, not satirical. Her follower count dropped from 5,200 to about 1,800 over the course of a week. Not as dramatic as some viral disasters, but significant for someone trying to build an influencer career. Monday, she tried a different approach with me. Ryan, look what this has done to my reputation. My follower count is destroyed. I didn't do anything to your reputation, Madison. You did this to yourself. All I did was make one comment on a live stream. You detailed a plan to marry me for financial gain. That's not one comment. It was taken out of context. What's the context that makes "can't wait to marry this fool and take half" sound good? Tuesday, her parents called. They'd seen some of the clips through mutual friends. Her mom wanted to apologize for Madison's behavior. Her dad said he understood why I'd called off the wedding and that they were embarrassed by what she'd said. Ryan, we didn't raise Madison to think like this. We don't know where this attitude came from. I think social media might have changed her priorities. Ryan, you're making the right choice. If she's thinking like this before marriage, it would only get worse after. Wednesday brought an unexpected call from my company's HR department. Ryan, we need to discuss something. There are videos circulating online where your fiancée mentions details about company growth and financial opportunities. My heart sank. I never shared any confidential information with her. We're not saying you did, but we need to be more careful about what gets discussed at home. We're going to need you to sign an additional confidentiality agreement. Is this going to affect my employment? No, but it's a reminder that personal relationships can create professional risks. I was lucky to keep my job. Madison's loose talk about my company could have been much worse. Thursday, Madison tried one last approach. Ryan, what if we do get a prenup? Would that fix things? Madison, the problem isn't the lack of a prenup. The problem is that you see our marriage as a business transaction. I don't see it that way. You literally described a timeline for staying married long enough to maximize your payout. I was exaggerating for content. Madison, you researched specific laws. You had a plan. I was just being prepared. Prepared to divorce me before we're even married. Friday, I finished moving her stuff out. She alternated between crying and arguing, but I was done. Ryan, 5 years from now, you're going to regret this. Madison, 5 years from now, I'm going to be grateful I dodged this bullet. Final update, 3 weeks later. The story has had a satisfying conclusion, though it took longer to play out than I expected. Week 2, Madison was telling mutual friends that I was financially controlling and that her stream had been her way of speaking out about my behavior. The problem with that story was that our friends knew me. They'd seen how I handled money in our relationship, fairly and openly. Her narrative didn't match their experiences with us. By week 3, most people had chosen sides, and most chose mine. Madison's follower count stabilized around 900 people, mostly drama watchers waiting to see what she'd do next. She tried posting normal fitness content, but the comments were always about the gold digger stream. 2 weeks ago, I found out she'd been messaging other influencers asking for advice on reputation recovery. Most ignored her, but one screenshot made it back to me showing Madison asking how to monetize controversy. She still didn't understand that what she'd done was wrong. Last week, I ran into Madison at the grocery store. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. "Ryan, hi. How are you doing?" "I'm good, Madison. How's everything going?" "It's been hard. This whole thing really affected my life." "I'm sorry you're having a tough time. Do you think we could ever try again? I've learned a lot from this." "Madison, what have you learned?" "That I need to be more careful about what I say online." "That's it? That's what you learned?" "And that privacy is important in relationships." "Madison, do you understand why what you said was wrong? Because it hurt your feelings? Because you were planning to exploit me financially?" "Ryan, I would never actually do that." "But you researched how to do it. You had a timeline. You were excited about the opportunity. I was just being dramatic." "Madison, I hope you figure out what you actually did wrong someday. But it won't be with me." "Me? I'm doing great. I took the money I would have spent on the wedding and put it toward a house down payment. My company situation worked out well, and I'm in a much better financial position now. Started dating again recently. Met someone named Jennifer, who works as a financial advisor. When I told her the Madison story, her response was perfect. She broadcast her plan to financially exploit you? That's not just gold digging, that's being bad at gold digging. No drama, no sympathy for Madison, just clear understanding that planning to exploit your partner is wrong. The best part about this whole experience? I learned that sometimes people tell you exactly who they are, and you should listen. Madison thought she was clever for researching how to maximize her financial gain from our marriage. She thought I was naive enough that she could brag about her plan to strangers on the internet. Instead, she revealed her true intentions to the one person who needed to hear them most: me. She wanted to marry a fool and take half. Instead, she played herself and lost everything. The internet might forget eventually, but I won't. In today's Reddit story, my fiancé secretly planned to dump me after our wedding and take half of everything. "He's just a temporary husband," she joked with her friends. I just smiled and let her think she won, until she saw what was really in the prenup. I'm Lucas, 33M, and for the past 3 years, I thought I had found the love of my life in my fiancée, Vanessa, 31F. We were a perfect match, or so I thought. I had a good job, a house I worked my ass off to afford, and I was ready to build a future with her. She had me convinced that she was in love with me, that we were a team, that we were going to start our happily ever after once we said, "I do." But then I found out the truth. She wasn't marrying me for love. She was marrying me for my money, and she planned to throw me away the second she got half of everything. I should have been angry. I should have been devastated. Instead, I smiled, because Vanessa had no idea that she had just sealed her own fate. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. Vanessa and I had been engaged for 6 months and were knee-deep in wedding planning. One day, she told me she was going out for a girls' night with her friends. No big deal, right? Wrong. That night, I was in the office catching up on work when her iPad pinged on the desk. She had left it there earlier, and normally I wouldn't have snooped. But the message that popped up made my stomach drop. "He has no idea. LMAO. It was from her best friend, Chelsea. I hesitated, but curiosity got the best of me. I opened the group chat, and that's when I saw everything. The messages were horrific. Not just a misunderstanding, not a bad joke. A full-blown, months-long plan to marry me, take half of everything, and then leave. Vanessa, God, I can't believe I'm actually going through with this wedding. This is gonna be the easiest money I've ever made. Chelsea, lol, girl, you're a savage. He really thinks you love him? Of course, I deserve this. I put in 3 years of pretending. After all that, I should get something out of it. You mean half of it? Exactly. He's just a temporary husband. Once the divorce papers are signed, I'll finally be free and rich. I felt physically sick, but it got worse. Another friend, Lauren, chimed in. Girl, what if he doesn't go for it? What if he fights you in court? Vanessa, lol, please. Lucas is a moron. He doesn't even have a prenup. I made sure of that. Chelsea, damn, you really played the long game. Respect. I just have to suffer through a few more months of acting like I care, and then boom, divorce settlement. I'm gonna be set for life. They were laughing about it, laughing about using me, laughing about ruining me, like I was some disposable ATM that had stupidly fallen in love with the wrong person. I sat there, staring at the screen, my whole world shattering around me. The woman I had planned to marry, the woman I had trusted, was waiting to stab me in the back the second she could cash in. I should have confronted her. I should have kicked her out that night. But instead, I took a deep breath and I smiled because I realized something. She thought she had won. She thought she had played me, but she had made one fatal mistake. She underestimated me. And now, I was about to become her worst nightmare. I wasn't just going to leave Vanessa. No, that would be too easy. She had spent 3 years pretending to love me, stringing me along, making me believe we were building a future together, all while secretly planning to destroy me. She thought she was playing a game. She had no idea that I had just changed the rules. The very next day, I took the first step toward her downfall. I met with my lawyer. His name was Jonathan, and he had seen his fair share of gold diggers. I laid everything out, the iPad messages, Vanessa's plan to divorce me and take half, the fact that she thought I was too dumb to get a prenup. Jonathan leaned back in his chair and smirked. Oh, she's gonna regret this. Together, we drafted the most ironclad, bulletproof prenup in existence. Some of the key terms included: if she initiates the divorce, she gets nothing. If infidelity is discovered, she must pay me a settlement. All assets acquired post-marriage remain solely mine. She has no claim to my house, cars, or income. This wasn't just a prenup. This was a trap. A legal landmine that Vanessa was about to walk straight into. The hardest part was making her believe that I was still the same clueless, love-blind fool. So I acted normal. I still kissed her, still talked about the wedding, still let her think she had me wrapped around her finger. I knew Vanessa wouldn't blindly sign a prenup. She thought she was smart, thought she had outplayed me, so I needed to bait her. I scheduled a fake meeting with my lawyer and made sure Vanessa accidentally overheard a phone call. I was in my office, talking just loud enough for her to catch snippets. Yeah, I don't care about the prenup. It's just standard. I'd never actually enforce it. Pause. Dude, come on. You think I'd ever take money from Vanessa? It's not like she's after my assets. Another pause. No, she already agreed to sign it. It's just a formality. I heard footsteps stop outside my office. I smirked. She had taken the bait. Later that night, I brought up the prenup again. Babe, my lawyer says it's pretty basic. But if it makes you feel better, we can add something for you too. Her eyes narrowed. Like what? I shrugged. Maybe a clause that guarantees you something small if we split, like a luxury trip or a little settlement, just so you feel safe. I made sure to say it casually, like I didn't care. That's when Vanessa took the bait completely. She sighed dramatically and gave me her best fake-loving smile. Fine, if it makes you happy, I'll sign it, but only if we add my clause too. I pretended to hesitate. Are you sure? You don't have to. Vanessa grinned. No, I don't want you to feel bad, babe. It's just a piece of paper. She thought she had manipulated me into giving her a tiny settlement so she wouldn't get suspicious. But what she didn't know, her clause was legally worthless. Jonathan and I made sure of it. It was deliberately vague, written in a way that made her think she was getting something, but legally, it held no real value. So when she finally signed the prenup, she did it thinking she had won. But in reality, she had just handed me the ultimate weapon against her. I wanted to laugh in her face, but instead, I just kissed her forehead and told her I loved her. Because now, the trap was set. Once the prenup was signed, I started laying the groundwork for the real revenge. I quietly transferred my assets into protected accounts, I stopped adding money to our joint wedding fund. I encouraged Vanessa to spend more, knowing full well she'd never see a dime of it again. Meanwhile, Vanessa? She was more confident than ever. She kept bragging to her friends about how she was going to divorce me. She started making plans for her post-divorce life. She even stopped pretending to be affectionate, acting like she had already won. I just smiled. She had no idea that she had signed away her entire future. And on our wedding day, she was about to seal her fate forever. Vanessa thought she had me exactly where she wanted me. She had played her part well, smiling sweetly, acting like the devoted fiancée, and pretending to love me while secretly planning her escape the moment the ink dried on the marriage certificate. She had no idea that the prenup she so confidently signed had already doomed her. And now, she was about to walk down the aisle straight into a trap. The big day. A gold digger's dream. The morning of the wedding, Vanessa was positively glowing. Not because she was marrying the man she loved. No, she was smug, confident. She thought she was about to pull off the biggest con of her life. Her bridesmaids surrounded her, helping her get ready, and I knew exactly what they were talking about. Chelsea, her best friend, had been hyping her up for months, calling me her golden ticket. Lauren, the one with morals, had been nervous about the plan but never actually stopped Vanessa from going through with it. And Vanessa? She was basking in her own success. She had picked out the most expensive venue. She had maxed out my credit cards on last-minute wedding luxuries. She kept flashing that fake, adoring smile, knowing she'd be free soon enough. I watched from across the room, playing my part perfectly. I was the loving, clueless groom. The guy who blindly adored his fiancée. The temporary husband who had no idea that his perfect wife-to-be was waiting to stab him in the back. She had no idea that I was waiting for her to do it. When she walked down the aisle, everyone saw a beautiful bride. I saw a woman walking straight into her own demise. As we stood at the altar, hand in hand, she squeezed my fingers just a little too tightly. That was her final act of deception. One last convincing performance before she cashed out. "Do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the officiant asked. She beamed. "I do." I smiled back. "And do you, Lucas, take Vanessa?" "I do," I said smoothly, my voice steady. Because in that moment, I was more certain than I had ever been in my life. She thought she was securing the bag. But as she slid the ring onto my finger, she unknowingly locked herself into her own nightmare. After the wedding, we flew to a 5-star resort in the Maldives. Vanessa had planned the entire honeymoon, picking the most expensive, luxurious locations. She had zero hesitation in spending my money, swiping my cards like she was already entitled to everything. I let her dig herself in deeper. Let her spend money she would never see again. Let her think she was in control. She kissed me, held my hand, and played the perfect wife, just enough to make sure I was still completely fooled, or so she thought. The truth? I was memorizing every single lie she told. I was counting down the days until she made her move. Because the second she did, she was done. 3 months into our perfect marriage, Vanessa started planting the seeds for her grand escape. She thought she was being subtle. She started picking fights over nothing. She began joking about how couples sometimes grow apart. She made comments about needing financial security in case things didn't work out. She was testing the waters, trying to see if she could manipulate me into thinking divorce was inevitable. And then, one night, she made her move. We were sitting in our dining room, drinking wine. The mood was light, but I could tell she was working up to something. "Lucas, babe, we need to talk." I looked up, pretending to be completely oblivious. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" She sighed dramatically, like this was so painful for her. "I just feel like maybe we rushed into this. Maybe we're not as compatible as we thought." I let fake sadness creep into my expression. "You don't think we're happy?" I asked softly. She reached for my hand. "I love you, babe. I really do. But I think we might need some space, a break. And maybe it would be best if we go our separate ways while things are still good." I held her gaze, forcing myself not to grin. "You're saying you want a divorce?" She nodded slowly. "I think it's for the best." I leaned back, sighing like my heart was breaking. And then I said the words that would destroy her. "All right, we'll go to the lawyer's office tomorrow." She tried to hide her excitement. She had no idea that she had just triggered her own downfall. Vanessa was radiant when we arrived at the lawyer's office. She had dressed to impress, a designer dress, expensive jewelry, and that smug little smile that made me want to laugh. To her, this was the final step in her plan. She had endured a few months of marriage and was now here to cash out. I played along, keeping my expression neutral as we walked inside. The receptionist greeted us, and we were led into a sleek, minimalist conference room. Vanessa took her seat like she already owned the place. She didn't realize she was about to get the worst news of her life. Jonathan, my lawyer, was already waiting for us. He was calm and collected, scanning Vanessa with an expression that said he had seen her type before. "Mrs. Carter," he greeted, nodding to her. She beamed. "Oh, you can call me Vanessa. I suppose I won't be a Carter much longer." I almost rolled my eyes. Jonathan gave me a quick glance before opening a thick folder filled with documents. "So let's discuss the terms of your divorce settlement," he said smoothly. Vanessa perked up. "Yes, let's." Jonathan flipped through a few pages, then paused for effect. "Now, just to confirm, you're the one initiating this divorce, correct?" he asked. Vanessa nodded. "Yes, I think it's for the best." "Right?" Jonathan said, tapping a paper. "In that case, we'll begin with the terms outlined in the prenuptial agreement you signed before marriage." For the first time, Vanessa's smug confidence wavered. "Wait," she said slowly. "Prenup?" Jonathan barely glanced up. "Yes, the legally binding prenuptial agreement you signed before the wedding. We'll be following those terms exactly." The room was silent for a moment. Then Vanessa laughed. "Oh, please, Lucas and I already talked about this. That prenup is just a formality. It doesn't actually mean anything." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Oh, it absolutely does." Then he turned to page 1 and started reading. "As per the signed prenuptial agreement," Jonathan said, voice steady, "if Mrs. Carter initiates a divorce, she will receive no financial compensation, assets, or spousal support from Mr. Carter." Vanessa's smile froze. Jonathan continued, unbothered. "Furthermore, due to the infidelity and financial fraud clauses," her head snapped up. "Excuse me, what?" Jonathan barely blinked. "Any proven intent to manipulate, deceive, or defraud Mr. Carter in financial matters results in a penalty payment owed to Mr. Carter." I leaned forward, resting my chin on my hands. "Vanessa, you really should have read the fine print." Vanessa's face drained of color. Her hands clenched the armrests of her chair, nails digging into the leather. "No," she whispered. "This has to be a joke." Jonathan remained stone-faced. "Not at all. In fact, it's legally binding, and your signature is on every page." Vanessa turned to me, eyes wide with shock. "Lucas, babe, we need to talk about this privately." I tilted my head. "Why? I thought you didn't love me. I thought I was just a temporary husband." Her breathing turned erratic. "That was just girl talk. It didn't mean anything." Jonathan cleared his throat, flipping another page. Actually, it did. Thanks to Mr. Carter's private investigation, we have chat logs, recordings, and evidence proving your intent to commit financial fraud." Vanessa gasped. "You spied on me?" she shrieked. "Oh, relax," I said, mimicking her usual dismissive tone. "It was just a formality. I trust you, remember?" Her hands were shaking now. She frantically turned to Jonathan. "This can't be legal. I'll fight this in court." Jonathan didn't even blink. "You're welcome to try, but you'd be wasting your time and money, especially since per the agreement, you're required to cover all legal fees for both parties in the event of a challenge." She looked like she was about to be sick. I could see it in her eyes. Reality was finally sinking in. She wasn't getting half. She wasn't getting anything. And worse, she actually owed me money. The next few weeks were glorious. Vanessa tried to fight it, but the prenup was airtight. Her friends found out everything and started roasting her in group chats. She became a joke on social media, exposed as a gold digger who got played. Even her own family turned on her. Her mom called me one night, saying, "I raised her better than this. She deserves what she got." That was satisfying. But the best part? The look on her face when she realized she had ruined her own life. Vanessa didn't just lose the divorce settlement, she lost everything. For years, she had carefully curated her image, playing the role of the sophisticated, high-value woman who had her life together. Now, she was nothing more than a walking punchline. It started slowly. The first cracks formed when Chelsea and Lauren, her closest friends, dropped her. Not because they were suddenly morally superior, but because nobody likes being associated with a public disaster. Screenshots of her temporary husband texts started circulating among mutual friends, ex-colleagues, and even family. People who once admired her for securing a successful man now mocked her for getting played. Her social media followers plummeted. She became a meme in private group chats. Her friends started joking about how she went from soon-to-be rich to financially ruined overnight. She tried to fight back, posting vague "I'm the real victim here" rants. But nobody was buying it. Even the people who had supported her plan were embarrassed for her. Because nobody respects a con artist who fails. The financial fallout hit harder than the social one. She was forced to move out of our luxury apartment and into a tiny rental. Her credit cards maxed out. Her shopping addiction? Unfunded. The lifestyle she flaunted online? Completely unsustainable. For the first time in years, Vanessa had to actually work. She applied for marketing jobs, but employers Googled her name. And what did they find? Screenshots of her scheme. People in professional circles discussing her failed con. Nobody wanted to hire the woman known for trying to scam her husband, so she settled for a low-paying retail job. From brunching at luxury hotels to folding clothes at a mall. It was poetic justice. I hadn't seen Vanessa in months, didn't think about her, didn't care. Until one day I walked into a coffee shop, and there she was, sitting alone. She looked different. The confidence? Gone. The smugness? Replaced with exhaustion. She had aged 10 years and 6 months. She saw me, and for a moment I could tell she debated running, but instead she gave a weak, defeated smile. "Lucas, hey, Vanessa." She hesitated, then sighed. "I deserved it, didn't I?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, then set it down. "Yes." Her eyes shone with unshed tears. "I lost everything." "No," I corrected. "You threw everything away." She swallowed hard, trembling. "I thought I was being smart," she admitted. I held up a hand. "I don't care." She flinched. I just wanted to apologize," she whispered. I met her gaze, calm, unforgiving, unmoved. "You're not sorry," I said. "You're just regretting the consequences." She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. I stood up, throwing a few bills on the table. "Good luck, Vanessa." And I walked away, because I was finally free.